everyone, this is Charmaine, and I'm the dietitian that helps people reverse type 2 diabetes with plant-based eating. And today we have Galia here, and we have a very special guest, Jay. Jay is actually a plant-based personal trainer, and he's actually Galia's fiance, which super excited to have him on here. A few weeks ago, me and my husband went to England, and all four of us got to chat together. We got to have lunch together. So it was really, really cool to have conversations. So we decided to have Jay on here on this podcast. You can say hi to everyone, Jay and Galia.
How you doing, everybody? Hello.
Hi. It's so weird. It's like a mixing of like my work life and my personal life right now.
Thank you so much for putting your personal life on podcast. Super appreciate it. Well, I wanted to ask Jay, I know, you're a personal trainer and you're also plant-based as well. So do you mind sharing with us a little bit of your journey from transitioning to plant-based?
Cool. Yeah, definitely. So started out with from an athletics background, always naturally quite obsessed and interested with the world of like health and fitness, but with a specific angle of optimizing it. So not just from I want to partake in this, but with anything that becomes a hobby, it can develop into the kind of inner ramblings and the inner science and how to do it the best way possible. And that kind of guided me to seek out, okay, how do I optimize my nutrition? How do I optimize my exercise? And that kind of led me from this, meat eating animal product approach and very standard kind of exercises and a typical way of doing things that most people just like when they start this kind of lifestyle just begin with, into this world of first veganism and then plant-based. And it was very, very interesting transition. So it started initially from a nutritional standpoint of how can I get the best results possible I was looking into things like inflammation, I was looking into things like recovery, and I always had a kind of contrarian way of looking at things, of thinking just because everyone does it one way doesn't mean it's the best way of doing it. Yeah, so that's kind of like how I started my transition into the plant-based lifestyle.
I think in the world of fitness and personal training, which Jay is a lot more immersed in than I am. But you have so many of these like strongly held beliefs. And Jay is like character-wise, I wouldn't say, of like a rebellious nature, but I think he likes to do things differently. He likes to have different methods and he likes to challenge things that are just blindly accepted. So in the fitness space, you have a lot of people who, do exercises ABC and eat XYZ just because everyone else does it without actually thinking about, does this actually make sense for me? Is this actually aligned with what I want to achieve? And so he really has like gone out on this kind of quest to figure out, what is the way of eating that my body responds to best in terms of how I feel on a day-to-day basis, and also in terms of my performance in the gym, the way that I train, the way that I recover, the way that I feel while I'm training. Do I feel depleted and tired during my sessions, or do I feel energized and lively? And it's this journey that I think started out like us being quite separate, and now it's like slowly merged together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first met Galia, she was very much so I
was a meat eater.
Very much so a meat eater. So it was interesting for me as well, because I think she was very shocked at the fact that I was almost maybe didn't believe. I think at the time I was vegan.
When we met, Jay was living on a diet of lentils and rice. That's it.
Which I don't recommend, by the way, to anybody.
Just lentils and rice, no vegetables, not much like micronutrients or variety in that. Just lentils and rice all day, every day. So much so that people used to joke, being like, Jay, we found like lentils in the shower.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like they were everywhere, because I used to carry around lentils with me all the time. Lentils are a fantastic food, by the way, to anyone listening. Obviously, you can't have anything is a bad thing. And there needs to be variation somewhere. But definitely.
All to say, when we first met, he was, he called himself vegan. He was just eating lentils and rice, like just that, no exaggeration. And I was this essentially gym bro girl who like only trained upper body, ate ham and eggs and like boiled chicken and rice all day long, every day, training multiple times a day. And we kind of met and like clashed in a weird sense, because he was vegan and proud and like almost, I would say almost aggressive about your veganism.
I mean, definitely. I mean, I think there can be, when you start or you transition into something and you start to feel the benefits of it, you almost get this realization: how are people not experiencing what I'm experiencing? How are they not feeling so light and having such good digestion and feeling so energized? And you kind of compare it, because when you do something so hardcore and you switch so hardcore to something else, you can really see it's almost like you are your own study.
Right.
So I think with that became this level of obsession and this attachment. And I think because I don't call myself vegan now, I call myself plant-based. And that's obviously due to the fact that I think that kind of aggressiveness came from this attachment to this identity, as opposed to this thing that's serving you. If you understand what I'm saying, from being plant-based, you kind of become this vegan as a person, as opposed to leading the plant-based lifestyle. So that's why I'm not vegan anymore. So I think that aggression has definitely calmed down. It's definitely more from a peaceful standpoint. But I'm not saying that vegans are, or someone who claims to be vegan is an aggressive person inherently. I'm just saying that's personally how I think when someone says they're vegan, it has this separatism from everyone else. And I think plant-based is inclusive. Anyone can be plant-based. Like, you can eat meat and still have a plant-based diet if it's the majority of the things you're eating. If vegetables are a main course instead of a side dish, you are technically plant-based by my standards anyway. And vegan can be quite totalitarian. So that's kind of the difference I see.
I think it was more for you about the like attachment to the identity and like belonging to that group initially when you called yourself vegan, than the actual like benefits that you were receiving from the way that you were choosing to eat. So like veganism for you was like an identity, like that was who you are, like you are a vegan, and now it's not as much of you saying, oh, I'm plant-based, but you saying like, I'm primarily plant-based. Like most of what I eat, almost all of what I eat is whole foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, as opposed to you just blanket ruling out the possibility of ever having a little bit or something. Like this is more inclusive of having some flexibility in your life. That makes sense.
Definitely, I would agree.
That totally makes sense. And I agree, I was vegan for, a couple of years, but it was not healthy. It was more so like a belief, if anything. But I think now I call myself plant-based because I feel like there should be flexibility and it's more of a way of living. Definitely agree with that, and I can relate. And Jay, I know you experimented with training on, a plant-based diet and on a meat diet as well. So can you tell us a little bit difference about, how you train and the difference that you feel and endurance and, just how you feel in general?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that when I was eating meat, I felt more tired all the time. I felt like from having such a traditionally protein-rich diet, I felt like my digestion wasn't so good. My skin was worse from the outside the training perspective. I felt as though just healthy in general, more energized. I feel like my sessions could last longer. I feel more naturally hydrated due to all the fruits I was having, which was so like obviously filled with the water and things like this. So a lot, just basically everything was more just energized. I felt honestly eating a protein-rich diet or eating an animal like protein diet, I think the major thing I realized was that protein seems to be the big myth here. And that is kind of like because it's this whole thing of recovery, and I think the reason why a lot of people frown against the plant-based life or the plant-based / vegan, vegetarian kind of lifestyle especially when it comes to the exercise world, is because that they're almost throwing their avatars forward, where they're like projecting, okay, I have this goal, I want to achieve it, I am here, I'm A, I want to achieve B, and the world tells me that I need protein to get there. And you kind of don't want to limit your potential progress. So you jump on the bandwagon and you say protein equals my goal. And obviously we can have a very high protein diet with a plant-based diet very, very easily without all the negatives of animal products. But at the same time, I'm not even an advocate for high protein diets anyway, due to the inflammatory response, due to the fact that if a lot of our calories are coming from protein, then we're not actually getting the energy, which is the fuel, which is the carbohydrates. So I feel like protein is the big thing here. And people think that you can only get protein from an animal diet, and then without recognizing you can get it from plants. Like all protein starts as plants anyway, right? And at the same time, recognizing that protein in itself, if protein is supposed to be recovery, in my opinion, protein recovery is more of a how your training system, like how that goes ahead. So how your system is. For example, if someone is running every single day and they say they need a certain level of protein to recover in time, your recovery would be better if you didn't run every single day. So eating protein is not literally putting muscle on your body. Well, it's not increasing your respiratory heart rate or anything like this.
Right. And recovery as well is more so associated with carbohydrates as opposed to proteins. So like when you exercise and you train particularly hard, you develop like these little micro tears in your muscles in order for them to repair. So for you to not have that achy kind of feeling, protein is not essential. What's essential is carbohydrates, right? So like it's in your best interest from a recovery perspective to have a diet that's rich and healthy, readily available kind of carbohydrates for the sake of recovery when it comes to strength training, but also from a perspective of endurance / cardiovascular training, because what you want is glycogen stores, right? That's your primary source of energy for the majority of forms of exercise. So if you're having a diet that's very, very low in quality carbohydrates, it's very high in protein, animal protein, that's also going to be high in fat, you're actually not going to recover as well. Your performance will go down because you won't have the preferential energy source, right, for whatever type of exercise activity you're doing. Right. So like you see this yourself as well, like before you train or after you train, like what are the foods that your body naturally craves? Are you craving a piece of chicken?
No, you're craving to replenish your glycogen. So,
right. So what do you crave?
Exactly,
like a banana?
You're craving a banana, or, even intra-workout. I mean, like, for example, you could have a banana before, during, or after a workout, like, because, it's going to give you the energy. It's going to give you energy throughout your workout, and it's going to replenish your glycogen. That's what you're using when you're exercising. I mean, like, if someone was just like, if anyone is on like a keto diet, for example, and all they're eating is protein and fat, they're not going to be very efficient with exercise, because for that kind of explosive energy or for optimal like muscle mechanic output, you need to have glycogen, you need to have carbohydrates, and they are, they're best packaged in the form of plant-powered foods.
I love that. And I think the results speak for itself. It's funny because when we actually met in person, my husband was like, wow, like he's so big, like he's so muscular. But I know that you don't take any protein powder, right? And you just really get your protein from natural foods. And you don't even make it an emphasis to, down protein, right?
In Jay's diet, we basically eat the same thing. Is that fair to say? You eat slightly more than I do.
Yeah.
But we eat the same foods. We eat the exact same thing because I cook most of the food. So, but there's no like planning of like protein into the meals. I feel like a lot of the time in fitness, it's like, here's my chicken, this is my like protein, and I will have some carbs here as well to supplement, like the carb is a supplement to the protein. It's not, oh, you know, let's have like nutrient dense foods to support our body function. It's, oh, let me make sure I'm getting enough protein. But it's very strange because, you know, and this is something Jay and I talk about a lot, but when you look at people in fitness who are plant-based, again, as to say, not necessarily that absolutely everything that they eat is just plants, but the vast majority of what they eat are plants, are fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains. People who are plant-based tend to have better physiques in the form of what is traditionally desirable. So they have a naturally lower body fat percentage. They have like more lean muscle fibers as opposed to these like clunky muscle bellies that look bulky or kind of natural. Most of the time people who look like that are on steroids, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, I mean, anything to do with I mean, that's a big thing to differentiate. That's a massive thing there. Just to quickly just butt in on what you're saying, is the difference between someone who is on performance enhancing drugs versus anything else. Because I think someone who is basically a normal human being with a normal functioning body, with a normal testosterone level, that individual will have a certain aesthetic, like physical aesthetic. But the second like performance enhancing drugs are involved, I mean, it becomes a whole different world. And I think what the big shame is that basically a lot of companies, food companies, have recognized that protein, almost like selling protein as the dairy industry recognized, okay, let's latch onto the fact that people think they need protein, and it's just a lack of nutritional understanding. And then companies would say, let's sell protein powders with the promise that this will give you the results you need. This will edge you closer. This will give you an edge on your competition, on the people you're comparing yourself to, your colleagues or whatever it is.
Right. And a lot of the time, so companies will promise, oh yeah, protein is your solution, but the protein is sponsored by, or athletes, right? Fitness models, more like it, are sponsored by these protein companies. And so people look at these fitness models being like, oh my God, they use this protein, so if I use it, I'm going to look like them, when really that person is on steroids. So you're not going to look like that person unless you either jump on steroids
or have the genetics,
or just have the genetics. So the answer isn't protein, right? So like we all have to operate within our genetic framework. Good quality nutrition can get you a long way. So eating good real food and training properly will help you get there. But this protein concept in the fitness world is very, very misleading. And I'll say, like, when I see photos of Jay from the past like 3 years, and in those 3 years he's been vegan, he's been a meat eater, and he's been plant-based. There's such distinctive phases, and you can really see the kind of toll that it takes on his body. So when he was vegan, he didn't have a varied enough diet, so he felt depleted, right? He wasn't eating enough fruits, vegetables, wasn't having enough water.
Lots of mock meats, lots of when you transition and you have no raw, maybe because your taste buds are too conditioned to, or it's very family history or cultural. So meat is always the main part of the meal. So even when you're vegan, due to saying, okay, I'm just not stop eating meat, your plate still looks the same. So it like the big, like the centerpiece of the plate is just artificial meat now. You know what I mean? Or and which is better and worse. Pros and cons of that. But yet again, it's more companies try to create things to kind of cater to different people's needs and wants, because people want to maybe be vegan or live a plant-based lifestyle, but they don't want to be vegan, actually, because plant-based would mean more plants and not mock meats, but they don't really know what it means. So then their product is created, look, your plate can still look the same, so that's kind of the transition. So that was a vegan, and then plant-based is now literally actually eating fruits and vegetables, which it wasn't really before,
right? And as to say, like, when you were vegan, in terms of your performance, I mean, you have great genetics to begin with, so you're just lucky, right? But your performance, I think you kind of hit a wall when you were vegan, because the nutrition wasn't supporting you to progress further.
Mhm.
And then when you started eating meat, I think you bought into a lot of like gym culture, like gym fitness culture, in terms of like the way you were training with the boys and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, you know, when you transitioned to being plant-based, I think you became a lot more, first of all, the variety in your diet has changed drastically. I saw Jay this morning just sitting with a bowl with like 6 fruits, just sitting there happily, like listening to a podcast. So I'm like, he's so
Love
cute.
that.
But, you know, it's so different from how he used to eat. And, you know, eating that way, I can see how much it energizes him. Because when you were eating, you know, more animal protein, I remember Jay being so like exhausted or on a mood level, like his moods fluctuated so much. It'd be like he was up here, he would train and crash and have nothing left in the tank. And it was because his glycogen stores, his nutrient like variety was so low that he could not sustain long efficient sessions.
Yeah, I also think that's one of the biggest things just about in there. And thank you for saying that, because after a meal, the energy is like I feel more energetic after a plate, after eating a meal of like plant-based food. Your energy goes up. It either stays the same because you're already on a high anyway, or it goes up. And when you're eating meat products, like your energy dips for such a long period of time before you start to see that energy return from the food you've eaten. Yet it's supposed to be so good for you, you know? And I think when your body wants to go into the shutdown, I don't think a shutdown is ever really a positive indicator of the food you're just eating. I think if you're instantly energized from the food you're eating, you have, you know, you're getting more of a positive return. You feel it instantly of what it's doing to your body,
right,
and how your body is responding positively to it.
Well, in a very like primitive way, like food is supposed to fuel you to continue going forward. Like if you were in the wild, you could not afford to have like a food coma and just fall asleep in the middle of nowhere.
No,
you'd get eaten by a lion and die. So from in a very like odd primitive kind of way, you know, when you're eating a meal, a really good indicator of if that's something that's serving you would be feeling good after you've eaten that meal, not feeling tired or lethargic, or, you know, having that like classic kind of food coma feeling. I think that's like a huge thing, right? Because you're eating to fuel your day, to fuel your activities. So if you're not feeling re-energized, there's something that your body's not really responding well to.
Yeah. What would you say? That makes me think of, I know someone said to me before, they're like, well, in our caveman days, we were eating meat, you know, we're hunters and gatherers. So what do you guys have to say about that?
I will say, me first.
You go first.
I will say that, yes, although that might be true, right, the hunter part was not the majority of the diet. So it wasn't guaranteed like when you were going to kill an animal and eat an animal, right? The majority of like the human diet, which is exemplified by the teeth that we have, is our teeth are the biggest physiological indicator of the diet that whatever species is designed for, right? So our teeth are designed for grinding foods. It's not designed for tearing foods. If our teeth were designed for tearing foods, we would have teeth that essentially almost all look like canines, and our canines would be much larger in order to tear chunks of animal protein, right? But we have primarily molars, incisors, our front teeth that are meant to like rip leaves and fruits and vegetables, and then the molars grind that down. The enzyme that is produced in our mouth is salivary amylase, which is designed to break down carbohydrates, right? It's not an enzyme that breaks down protein. And then as you move down the digestive tract, there's more and more physiological evidence that our bodies are really designed primarily and foremost to process a plant-based diet. The fact that our intestines are so long, right? It's really designed to strip as much nutrients from fruits and vegetables, right? When you look at the gut of a carnivore, the gut is much shorter. So all of the physiological kind of evidence points to us being primarily gatherers, right? And maybe an occasional hunter, but really truly occasional. That's my point. You can go now.
I would say it's really fascinating, actually, because there's so many. I would say for anyone listening, and for us as well to visualize, let's say we were hunter-gatherers. Let's say we're in that position, and we have berries, and we have, things, fruits and vegetables, etc., readily available, ready to consume, like at the point of hunger.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have this hunter argument where you have to kill an animal, and then if we're not eating in its raw form with all the blood and all of this, the raw skin as a raw hide, then we'd have to use heat to manipulate the structure to be able to readily digest it. So I would say when people use this argument of hunter-gatherer, but the hunter-gatherers, and we were hunters and gatherers, etc., people are thinking of like the, breaded processed meat that we have today, as opposed, the seasoned heat manipulated meat that we have today, as opposed to like if we're talking about an animal that's just been killed by a hunter and you are going to consume that on site, as opposed to you have berries which with carbs, like the sugars of the berries, the fruit sugars ready to consume on site, we are always going to go for the berry over the dead animal. We don't have the seasoning, we don't have all of this food science to manipulate and capitalize on how humans react to certain textures and foods. In its readily available pure form, it's always going to be the gatherer angle.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. And, that would have been my argument as well. But one thing I want our listeners to know is that, there can be all these, and of course, what we say is what we believe. There can be all these like theories, but I would say try for yourself and see how you feel, because just like Jay said, like how you feel is the biggest indicator of what your body loves, right? What your body will thrive on. And, I cannot tell you how many people just feel so energized on this lifestyle when before, they were told that if they have diabetes, they have to eat a lot of meat, less carbs, and, they're feeling horrible, but now they eat more carbs and they're feeling great. Their blood sugar is lowering, which is very, counterculture. And so I love that you're very counterculture as well, Jay, because, it really does come down to the science. And another thing that I want to ask of you guys is to share a little bit of your experience of your experiment with being super strict with plant-based. I know you guys were training for the past couple of weeks. So how are you guys' results? And, I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, first. Okay, cool. So I think any kind of structure is important in any field of life, whether it comes to planning your week and day or goes to your exercise regimen. I feel like if someone's doing a random workout, having a workout that is consistent is going to yield results as your body slowly develops and adapts to what you're doing. And I think the same goes for nutrition. And I think in a combination of nutrition, exercise, if you have a specific goal you're trying to achieve, those incremental steps of repeating the same processes over and over again are going to yield quicker results, as opposed to giving your body random information. Like I'm going to eat this random thing today that I haven't eaten before in my life, and I wonder how my body's going to react to it. And I'm going to do this random workout and let's see how my body reacts to it. That's just not going to yield results. So basically, we've just been, having a more regimented system of eating, eating kind of a similar, quite closely knitted basket of food. So for example, similar fruits, not the same fruits every day, but a similar kind of fruits that we're eating, having like a consistent kind of breakfast, and then, picking between maybe different types of legumes and combine food combining different grains, legumes and fruits and vegetables as like a dinner plate. Along with that, having, just being more regimented with steps and increasing that over time, increasing general activity, and having like a regimented program. So basically all encompassing, like eating similar foods so my body can react to it over time, increasing steps so your general activity is increasing. So you have a comparison, eating less, moving more, and moving in a specific way, not moving explosively, where our body is going to use up all our glycogen, but basically having it from a low impact style of movement in the form of steps. It's a trackable means of using that, the cardiovascular exercise that doesn't require so much energy.
So in particular, so like Jay explained, kind of, we are being quite strict with our food in terms of like, our bodies do really, really well with structure. Like all humans do well with structure because our body likes to follow a set out circadian rhythm, right? So like our bodies thrive when we wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, eat at similar times, eat similar, not the same foods, but like similar types of meals. Our bodies really, really thrive. So just making sure that we're eating plenty of quality foods, plenty of quality carbohydrates, both like complex and simple in the forms of fruits, to ensure that we have full glycogen stores at all times. And we're walking, I would say honestly, on average 15 kilometers a day. So we're moving a lot, but because we have good glycogen stores, we make sure that we feel good. It doesn't feel exhausting. It feels really intuitive and like natural. And because it's not some intense explosive form of exercise, you don't require like a refractory recovery period. So like if I ran 15 kilometers today, I would definitely need to rest tomorrow, right? Maybe the day after that. But when you walk it, our bodies are really designed for walking. That's a completely separate like conversation, but our bodies are really designed to walk. That's like the primary movement that our bodies are made for. Our bodies are not as much designed for running. Some people's bodies are more so than others, but everyone can walk, right? And so really just ensuring that our diet can support that, we're being more active, just increasing our awareness of how much we're moving. And I mean, it's been a week and a half and like we're not killing ourselves like tracking food or anything. We eat when we're hungry, we eat when we feel we need to, we enjoy our foods, we feel like we have that freedom in our foods, we're moving more, we're doing it together, so we're like accountability partners in the whole shebang. And like in the past week and a half, we've each dropped I think 1% body fat. I think you've dropped more than that at this point. I've dropped 1%, he's dropped a bit more than that. And I mean, previously to have done that, we would have tracked all the things that we ate on like MyFitnessPal and like would have done explicit like cardio and but it's just such a natural result. Like it doesn't feel like we're killing ourselves to get there, and we feel good in the process. I think a lot of the time when people in fitness do like a body recomp, like working on their body composition, they kind of kill themselves to get there. And I think the fact that it's happening so organically shows that we're doing it in a way that's like really healthy for us, that's non-restrictive, that we can enjoy. And yeah, I mean, it's been fun so far.
Yeah, it's been really, really good. I mean, super simple, super simple. Just ensuring, I think by having a lower fat, mid to higher carbohydrate, kind of mid to lower protein diet ensures we always have enough glycogen for a resistance session, for challenging the muscles of the body. And by doing steps as a form of cardiovascular exercise consistently, you could always do more steps because it requires so little energy, but it doesn't exhaust you in the same way that running will. But it's a whole other energy system you're using, right? So basically we're saving the glycogen, the carbohydrate pathway for the resistance, and we're basically always ensuring that we progressively get more and more steps. This is very easy for anyone to implement because you can always do more steps.
As something that you can work up as well. Like you can have a starting point. Like you could start by doing a couple thousand steps a day, and then each couple of days challenge yourself to like increase on that. Like again, like we said, it requires no equipment. You don't need a gym membership, you don't need a trainer, but you're going to be moving more in a way that's like really healthy and natural for our bodies, that you can keep track of if you have a smartphone. So like it's a really kind of easy way for anyone to start kind of just moving more, and then just having that awareness of like what you're eating. I mean, there's like a saying in the fitness community that, to be honest with you, I kind of hate the saying, but like people say it anyways, of like abs are made in the kitchen. So like as to say like your body composition, having a lower body fat is very dependent on what you eat, not necessarily as much how you train. It's easier to modify your diet than it is to like burn I don't know how many calories, right? Like I don't love that saying. Love it.
But I do think, but I think it's how is mainly, I think that's the big misconception of people.
No, 100%.
Because I think the mentality is, for a lot of people, they're thinking, okay, if I just reduce my carbohydrates like crazy and suffer and have low cognitive function and struggle at work and have terrible workouts, but I'm losing weight, then it's worth it. Like we're not trying to lose weight per se. We're trying to, you know, just recomp a little bit of body fat, which is very easy to do at any point in time. But we're doing it with a smile on our face, because the fact that we feel like, and we're thinking clearly, because we have our glycogen stores like fill up, we're functioning optimally on day to day, whilst recomping at the same time, due to how we're doing it in the kitchen. We're not just thinking from a caloric standpoint, but we're thinking from if fat yields more calories.
It feels like a cheat code.
It feels like a cheat code.
It's like we come home from our walk and we have like this massive bowl of like fruit or something in the evening, and we're so happy to have it because we've just gone on this walk. We've maybe used a little bit of glycogen stores, so naturally you're craving carbohydrates. Yeah. We sit there, we enjoy every bite, we buy different fruits every couple of days, and it just feels so great. And you know, like I said, it's happening in like what feels like a really like organic, healthy way, when previously, like if we might have done this in previous years when we didn't know what we know now, we would have like tracked every little calorie and ultra restricted ourselves and avoided carbs. And you know, it just feels really, really natural, and it's having like this fun, positive impact, because so we both wear Apple Watches, so it kind of tracks our activity, and we're both friends with my sister on like the fitness sharing app. So my sister sees us like going on these walks, and then I'll get a notification of like my sister's now working out because she sees that we went for a walk, so she wants to compete with us. So like the three of us are now in competition with each other, and she'll like send Jay screenshots being like, you went on another walk? Yeah. And then I'll see like on my sister's Instagram story that she's like at the gym or something. We're very competitive people.
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you said, Jay, about, you know, just you're doing it with a smile on your face, right? I think just simplicity is over everything. I think we just overcomplicate things, right? Like we talk about, you know, we have all these theories about like macros and, you know, like calories and things like that. But I just love that it's so simple for you guys. You're not tracking any, well, you are tracking, you know, just to compare, but you're not like counting calories, counting protein grams or fat grams or anything. You're just really choosing simple, healthy foods, right? And I think a lot of people need to understand that, you know, this is actually much more simpler than they think, right? Like blood sugar balance is much more simpler than they think it should be. I think we just overcomplicate things a lot of times. Right. So I love that.
And I'll also add in, like, from the perspective of me having type 1 diabetes, I feel so much more in control like the past 2 weeks than I did previously. And previously I felt like I was in control as well. But now that I can kind of put that point of comparison, naturally, like your insulin sensitivity is dictated by obviously genetics in part, but also very much so what and how you eat and how much you move. So now that I've been a lot more kind of conscious of like my choices in food, because I did go through a couple of weeks where I think I struggled with navigating my lifestyle and like being social, and it's always really, really challenging. But I just made that commitment to myself of how I feel on a day-to-day basis is so much more important to me, and I really want to commit myself to that. And so being kind of more regimented and decisive in my eating, and then moving more, my insulin sensitivity has gone up through the roof. So every day I'm having to like reduce my background insulin, which is kind of crazy. Because I mean, after the first day where we decided we're going to do this, we're going to treat it like a science experiment, we're going to track everything just for the sake of the data to figure out what really works. After day one, literally I had like 7 low blood sugars the next day because my insulin sensitivity got so high. Wow. And each day I've had to make reductions. So like before, and naturally everyone uses different amounts of insulin, like the number, it doesn't matter, but it's the change, right? It's the reduction that indicates your sensitivity. So when we started, my background insulin, I was using, I think 25 units a day. I'm down to 18 currently, and it's been like 9 days. So, and each day I'm having to reduce a little bit by little bit, and I'm getting away with eating things without any insulin. Like it's almost like a game for me. because I'll be like, what can I get away with today? Like I'll have like my breakfast bowl of like some fruits and like PB2. I'll like look at Jay and I'll be like, I think I can eat this for free. Like I don't have to give myself any insulin, and I'll have it and I don't need any insulin. And it's so cool because it feels like I'm hacking the system somehow. So I want to see like how much I can, you know, reduce my kind of insulin needs. And I had already reduced them drastically when I became plant-based, because I used to use like 40 something units of background insulin. Just being plant-based and flexible, I was on around 25. And now that I'm being a little bit more regimented, it's coming down even more. So it's kind of crazy.
That is crazy. That is super, super cool. I love that. And it's great that these results come unexpectedly. It's not like you're gonna white knuckle through it. It really just come naturally when you give your body what it needs, right? So I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else, Jay, that you'd like to, you know, speak to our audience about if someone's on the fence of, you know, transitioning to plant-based with their diabetes?
I would say that the big thing I would say is the kind of the benefit, especially of what we're doing, which I can relate it to, which I'm really realizing is that a lot of people feel there's two things, as I mentioned throughout this whole podcast. So the first thing I'd say is the protein thing, is that you can get enough protein, you can get more than enough protein on a plant-based diet, and protein is not going to be the issue. But even analyzing protein as a specific thing, protein is not the answer to all of your problems. I think a lot of it is learned behavior and learned culture, but also I think a lot of like wisdom in an individual is unlearning what you've learned and not just accepting it as like the truth because this is what society and the world has told you, and because everyone else is doing it, because maybe everyone else doesn't have the results that you want, maybe everyone else isn't doing what you want for your life. So I think if an individual is analyzing their kind of targets, or they have specific goals, especially in terms, it might be composition, it may be reversing type 2 diabetes, it may be optimizing living with type 1, it may be just any kind of health condition, you know, giving your body what it wants, which is plant-based nutrition. You know, from every standpoint, we can see that plant-based nutrition is what our body naturally wants, and everything else is learned behavior. It's a fantastic option, and especially in terms of composition as well, because I do think it is basically a hack. Like the combination of, like, let's say for example, protein is the answer, just for conversation point of view. If I'm eating legumes, beans, having like cruciferous, I always get that word mixed up, cruciferous vegetables and fruits. I'm very hydrated because those foods are filled with water, first of all. So a lot of times we think we're hungry when we're really thirsty. So it solves that problem. Second problem it solves is that it's filled with protein and carbohydrates with less fat. So you're getting the protein, you're getting the energy without the fat that yields more calories, meaning that you feel fuller with less calories, which means that if you have a problem with overeating calories or fat composition, it solves that problem. You're getting enough protein to recover and optimize your nutrition. You're minimizing inflammation and digestional issues. You're never getting tired after every meal, and your energy spikes up or maintains constant. And
it's just a win-win-win.
It's a win-win from every single angle. The only sacrifice one has to make is unlearning and the curiosity of, is this something that is going to serve me potentially? And I think, you know, I think people say that, you know, taste buds have a last 2 weeks. I think they have a memory of 2 weeks. So if someone just commits for a short period of time, they can very quickly see results, and hopefully those results spur them on to try to continue in that lifestyle.
We say this all the time. Don't take our word for it. Just try it and see.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jay and Galia. I think this has been super fruitful, no pun intended. And I really appreciate just your expertise and just your experience sharing your story. So thank you so much for coming on. And for those of you who are listening, if you can give us a great review, that would be amazing. That would mean the world to us. And if you're interested to learn more about reversing diabetes or reversing insulin resistance on a plant-based diet, make sure you check out my free training. The link is in the description or the show notes. And I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.